It's a strange feeling, watching your life collapse in slow motion. The night I saw my fiancée walk away with tears in her eyes, I knew the battle was already lost. Not to another man, but to my own sister. And the worst part? She smiled while doing it. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. They say betrayal from a stranger wounds the skin, but betrayal from blood cuts to the bone. I never understood that until my own sister ripped apart the one thing I had built with my whole heart. My name is Noah Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I used to believe family was unshakable. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the streets were lined with oak trees and neighbors waved from their porches. Our house wasn't grand, but it was home, white picket fence, a creaky front door, the smell of mom's cooking filling the hallways every evening. I was the firstborn, the dependable one. The boy who never gave our parents trouble, who came home on time, who kept his head down and worked hard. My younger sister, Claire, was different. She was light where I was shadow, radiant, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. Even as kids, she had a way of pulling the spotlight toward herself without even trying. Back then, I thought her theatrics were just a part of her charm. She could talk her way out of anything, flash that smile, and all was forgiven. I was proud to be her brother. Protective, even. I was her shield through every high school heartbreak, every argument with our parents. But somewhere along the way, I began to see something else behind her perfect smiles, something sharper. It was subtle, a flicker in her eyes when someone praised me, or when I achieved something she hadn't. I ignored it for years, brushing it off as normal sibling rivalry. What I didn't realize was that envy doesn't always burn bright. It smolders. Quietly, patiently, until it finds the perfect moment to ignite. And when it did, the flames would consume everything I loved. It was late autumn when I met Olivia Parker, one of those evenings where the air carried that faint smell of rain, and the city lights shimmered like gold against the wet streets. My company had sponsored a charity gala, and I was there more out of obligation than interest. I remember standing near the back, nursing a drink, half listening to a speech, when my eyes caught hers across the room. She wasn't like the others, no exaggerated laughter, no desperate attempt to be seen. Olivia moved with quiet confidence, weaving through the crowd with a clipboard in one hand and a phone in the other, orchestrating the entire event like a conductor with an invisible baton. Every detail flowed under her command, yet she still found moments to offer a warm smile to anyone who crossed her path. Something about her presence made the noise of the room fade. When we finally spoke, it was as if we had skipped the usual formalities. Conversation flowed effortlessly, dipping into stories about work, family, and dreams for the future. She wasn't trying to impress me. She was simply herself. And that was enough. Over the next few weeks, coffee dates turned into late-night dinners, and late-night dinners turned into weekends away. She had a way of making ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Sunsets from a car window, grocery store runs, even waiting in line at the post office. I wasn't just falling in love. I was building a vision of the life we could share. When I introduced her to my family, I wanted them to see what I saw, a woman of strength and grace. My parents welcomed her warmly. But Claire's handshake lingered just a second too long, her gaze sweeping over Olivia in a way I couldn't quite read. I told myself it was curiosity. But deep down, a small, uneasy voice whispered. This was the moment the ground began to shift. The first time I noticed it, we were having dinner at my parents' house. Olivia was sitting beside me, telling a story about a mix-up at her office that ended in laughter. Everyone around the table was smiling except Claire. She was watching Olivia closely, her expression unreadable, like she was studying every word for cracks to exploit. Over the next few weeks, the small things began. At family gatherings, Claire would interrupt Olivia mid-sentence to correct some insignificant detail. She'd make playful remarks about Olivia's job, as if event planning wasn't a real career. Her tone was always sweet enough to mask the bite underneath, but I felt it. Olivia felt it too. One afternoon, Claire asked me, casually, as if she were talking about the weather, if I ever thought Olivia was too perfect. She said it with a laugh, but there was something calculated in her eyes. She suggested that people who seemed perfect often had the most to hide. At first, I brushed it off as sibling protectiveness. Claire had always been opinionated about who I dated. But it wasn't just words. There were looks, long stares between her and Olivia that felt like silent duels. Then came the moment I couldn't shake. Olivia had joined us for a Sunday lunch. While I was in the kitchen helping Mom, I overheard Claire in the living room telling Olivia that she hoped she was ready for the kind of loyalty Noah expects. It sounded harmless, until I saw Olivia's face. Later, the faint crease in her brow that hadn't been there before. Claire's words were like drops of poison, too small to kill instantly, but enough to start working their way into the bloodstream. And in the quiet corners of my mind, I wondered if she was right. I didn't know it yet, but the first cracks in my future had just formed. 2 years into our relationship, I decided I was done waiting. Olivia was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I'd been carrying the ring for weeks, waiting for the right moment. That moment came on a winter night, beneath the glow of string lights draped across the city park. Snow fell in soft, lazy spirals, and the air was sharp enough to make our breath visible. She said yes. I'll never forget the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes shone like the snow was reflecting every ounce of her happiness. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable, like the world was exactly as it should be. When I told my family, my parents were overjoyed. Mom hugged Olivia like she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. Dad clapped me on the back, grinning. Then Claire stepped forward. Her hug was warm, her voice smooth as she congratulated us. But her eyes didn't match her tone. There was a flicker of something I couldn't place, like she had just been handed a challenge she intended to win. The days after were a blur of planning, venues, flowers, invitations. Claire offered to help, insisting she had experience from helping friends with their weddings. At first, I was grateful. It felt like maybe this would be the bridge between her and Olivia. But the way she inserted herself into every decision. It wasn't just enthusiasm. It was control. She argued over the guest list, questioned why we choose one song over another, even hinted that Olivia's choice of dress wasn't flattering enough. Olivia brushed it off at first, saying she didn't want to cause tension between siblings. I told myself Claire just wanted the best for me. But a part of me, small but growing, wondered if she wanted the wedding to be about me and her, not me and Olivia. I didn't know it then, but letting her in was the worst mistake I could have made. At first, Claire's presence felt helpful. She handled small tasks, calling vendors, comparing decoration samples, arranging dress fittings. Olivia thanked her more than once, saying it made the process easier. But I noticed how Claire always seemed to shift the spotlight toward herself, telling stories about how she had convinced us to choose one option over another. Then her comments about Olivia started to sharpen. They were never direct insults, just sly observations laced with suggestion. She'd point out how Olivia was never home on time, or how she seemed too busy for me lately. If Olivia wore a new dress, Claire would mention how she had a friend who wore that better. I caught her once, standing with Olivia near the staircase, leaning in close. When they saw me, they both fell silent. Olivia's expression was guarded, but Claire smiled like nothing had happened. Later that night, Olivia seemed distracted, her laughter softer, her eyes distant. Claire began arranging sister time with Olivia, spa days, lunches, shopping trips, without telling me until afterward. I thought it was a good sign until little cracks appeared. Olivia started asking me strange questions about old relationships, about whether I'd ever kept secrets from her. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Claire was whispering in both our ears, each in different ways. With me, she'd plant doubts about Olivia's priorities. With Olivia, she'd question my loyalty. It was a subtle, calculated erosion of trust. One evening, as we were finalizing the seating chart, Claire suggested removing one of Olivia's close friends because it might cause drama. She said it with a concerned tone, but her eyes gave her away. She wasn't protecting us. She was maneuvering pieces on a chessboard only she understood. I still didn't see the full picture. But the air between Olivia and me was already shifting, slightly colder, slightly thinner. Claire had started her work, and we were both unknowingly breathing it in. It started with a phone call from a mutual friend. Her voice was hesitant, almost apologetic, as she told me what she'd overheard at a dinner party. Claire, leaning casually against the bar, talking to a small group. She was saying she worried about me, that she had seen Olivia with another man, looking a little too close for comfort. The friend insisted it sounded like gossip, nothing more. But I couldn't shake it. Claire's words had a way of sticking, even when I didn't want them to. When I confronted Olivia, she was shocked, hurt that I'd even ask. She explained it was her coworker, someone I'd met briefly, and that they'd been discussing a work project over coffee. Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker in her eyes, the kind that appears when trust is no longer absolute. I wanted to believe her, and I did. But the seed had been planted, and it was growing. Then came the email. Anonymous. No text, just a handful of photos. Blurry, grainy, taken from a distance, but enough to make the scene look intimate. Olivia and the same man, leaning in, heads close together. In reality, I knew the angles could deceive, but the images had power. They whispered things in the back of my mind, urging me to doubt. Claire's timing was perfect. She called me the next day, pretending not to know about the email, asking softly if everything was okay between us. Her tone dripped with concern, but I could feel the satisfaction hiding underneath. I told myself it was coincidence, that my sister couldn't possibly be behind something like this. But that night, lying in bed, I realized Olivia had fallen asleep with her back turned to me. And that was when I knew something between us had shifted, and it wasn't shifting back. After the email, the air between Olivia and me grew heavier, like a fog that refused to lift. Conversations felt shorter, glances lingered too long, and silences became sharp enough to cut. We still went through the motions, planning the wedding, meeting with vendors, but there was a hesitation in her smile now, as if she was holding back a part of herself. Claire's presence seemed almost orchestrated. She would drop by unannounced, timing her visits when Olivia was home alone. Sometimes I'd arrive to find them in the living room, mid-conversation, their faces unreadable. Olivia would excuse herself quickly, while Claire stayed seated, watching me with that same calm expression she always wore when she was several steps ahead. She began playing the role of mediator. With me, she spoke in low tones, telling me she was concerned, that Olivia seemed distracted lately. With Olivia, she played the protective sister-in-law, suggesting that I might be stressed or keeping something from her because of the wedding pressure. It was genius in a cruel way, feeding both of us just enough suspicion to keep the rift widening without either of us realizing she was the source. One night, Olivia and I had our first real fight. It started over something small, the timing of the rehearsal dinner, but spiraled quickly into accusations. She asked me if I'd been fully honest with her about my past. I asked her if there was anything she wasn't telling me. Neither of us backed down. Claire had succeeded in creating the perfect loop, two people both in love, both doubting each other, and both turning to her for reassurance. I didn't see it yet, but by the time the wedding was close, Claire wasn't just influencing the situation. She was steering it, and we were both letting her. 2 weeks before the wedding, I came home to find Olivia sitting on the edge of our bed, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes fixed on the floor. The air in the room felt tense, almost electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. She said she couldn't go through with it. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the exhaustion behind it, the kind that comes from months of doubt, second-guessing, and feeling unseen. She didn't accuse me of anything outright, but her words made it clear. The trust between us had eroded beyond repair. I wanted to fight for us. I wanted to tell her everything we'd been feeling was a manipulation, a trap we'd both walked into. But I had no proof, only a gut-deep certainty. And by then, it was too late. When she walked out that night, suitcase in hand, Claire was already at the house. She claimed she'd come by to check on me, after sensing things were tense. Her timing was suspiciously perfect. She stood in the hallway as Olivia passed, offering a faint smile and a polite farewell, like a hostess seeing off an unwanted guest. After Olivia was gone, Claire made tea. She sat across from me, her voice calm, saying maybe it was for the best. That I needed someone who truly understood me, that not everyone is meant to stay. Her words were dressed in concern, but her eyes told the truth. They gleamed with the quiet triumph of someone who had just won a battle no one else even knew was happening. I didn't cry that night. I didn't yell. I just sat there, staring at the empty space where Olivia's things had been, realizing my sister hadn't just broken my engagement. She had dismantled my entire future, piece by piece, and made me thank her for it. It was weeks after the wedding was called off when the truth finally found me. I was sitting alone at a small cafe downtown, trying to convince myself that life would eventually feel normal again, when my phone rang. It was Mark, an old mutual friend of mine and Olivia's. He didn't waste time with small talk. His voice was low, urgent, the kind of tone people use when they're about to tell you something you can't unhear. He said Olivia had told him everything. That she had finally pieced together the whispers, the suspicious encounters, and the strangely timed coincidences. It had been Claire all along. The anonymous email with the photos? Claire. She'd followed Olivia and her coworker to that cafe, taking pictures from an angle that made them look intimate. The rumors at the dinner party. Claire again, carefully dropped in the right ears to ensure they'd find their way back to me. She had even created fake social media accounts to send me anonymous messages about Olivia's supposed disloyalty. But the most chilling part? Mark told me Olivia had found text messages between Claire and a mutual acquaintance. Messages where Claire bragged about saving me from a marriage I would regret. She called it doing me a favor. But the tone was smug, almost gloating. I sat there in the cafe, my coffee going cold, as every moment from the past year rearranged itself in my mind. Every concerned look, every perfectly timed visit, every question she'd asked that had felt harmless at the time, it all made sense now. Claire hadn't just interfered. She'd orchestrated the entire downfall with precision, as if my happiness had been her personal enemy. And the worst part? I knew she'd never admit it to me, not because she was ashamed, but because she was proud. It's been nearly 2 years since that day in the cafe, and in some ways, I'm still piecing myself back together. I moved to a different city, took a new job, and built a life that doesn't have space for Claire in it. She's tried to contact me a few times, birthdays, holidays, even just random checking-in messages. But I don't answer. I don't owe her a conversation, not after what she took from me. Forgiveness isn't something I'm interested in giving her. Not now, maybe not ever. Sometimes people ask me if I miss Olivia. I do. I think about what our life might have been like, mornings with coffee and sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor, the quiet comfort of knowing we'd chosen each other against the world. That vision still stings when I remember it, because it was real, until Claire made sure it wasn't. The hardest part isn't losing Olivia. It's knowing the person who destroyed us shares my last name. Blood ties used to mean loyalty to me, a bond no one could break. Now, they're a reminder that the deepest cuts can come from the hand you trust most. People like to say time heals everything, but they're wrong. Time doesn't erase betrayal, it just teaches you how to live with it. It dulls the sharp edges, but the scar remains, a quiet mark you carry into every new relationship, every new friendship, every time you dare to trust again. And sometimes, late at night, I catch myself wondering if Claire even sees herself as the villain. Or if, in her mind, she's still the hero of the story, saving her brother from a future she decided he didn't deserve. Either way, she'll never get the chance to rewrite my life again. That chapter is closed, locked, and buried. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.